We've had Mike on the line, wants to make an argument for pagan gods. Mike, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thank you. I love your show. Thank you so much for having me on, Ken. It's an honor to talk to you. Dr. Student Ben, I'm not familiar with you, but it's an honor to meet you, sir.
Yeah, it's more of an honor to be talking to SDB than me, but let's dive in. I think you might be my first caller who is making an argument for pagan gods. So I'm very interested in seeing where this goes.
Sure. One thing I wanted to do real quick is to talk about the solidarity I feel with atheists, because the dominant Abrahamic Christian worldview that's in the West, not only do I deny that I need Christ for any type of salvation from a desert myth, and I deny that the Bible's the Word of God, but I do follow other deities. So it puts me in an awkward place, and I do find a lot of solidarity with atheists. I enjoyed this show. A lot of the arguments that I get for the theists, for the Christians, I get from atheists. So right on. So
we certainly don't. Just dovetailing into what you just said there, Mike. We certainly don't want this to be a show that only atheists can enjoy. So yeah, we hope that anybody can tune in here and have a good time. So all right, let's hear let's hear what you believe and why.
Okay, so I would say that everybody feels the pagan gods. The pagan concept of deity is a lot different than how we've been meant to see it in the West. So, or under the Abrahamic faith that we're all probably coming out of. So, like when you look at the moon, we feel something. People feel something around a storm. Think of all the people who are storm chasers or who stay behind in hurricanes. People like a storm. And I would argue that these feelings resonate with us because we're all made of creation. The four pagan elements you hear about, fire, air, earth, water, are all in us. We have water in us. We even have fire or electric in us in our brain when our fire in our neurotransmitters through the synaptic gaps. So I would say that we resonate with these forces. And the ancient people, the first pagans, the ancient people, felt these forces, obviously, and what they've done is they've personified them and, of course, anthropomorphized them into the deities and given them these attributes and these stories and these myths that go along with them.
Okay.
That would
be...
So
just to make sure I'm following you, and I want to let you keep going, it sounds to me, and I'm just trying to really cut to the essence of what I think you're saying to me. So correct me if I'm misreading or mishearing you. It sounds to me like what you're saying is that human beings feel a connection to nature because we are part of nature.
Exactly.
Okay.
I don't
all right. So if
design.
Okay. So with that being the sort of the foundation, because I could agree with that human beings feel a sense of connectivity to nature, and at least for some, in part, that could be because we are part of nature. Like we feel a sense of community with nature, or we identify with the natural world in some way. I could be on board with that. So now I'm wondering why we would take it steps further into like deities or anthropomorphizing the things that we feel.
Good point. And that ancient people, I think, I think the majority of people all have some desire to want to believe in something higher than them. If you want to use that expression, God, deity, whatever.
What if I told you I don't feel that? What if I told you that I don't feel any? Yeah.
I wouldn't believe you, and I would say that you're saying that for the argument. Everybody feels.
Well, let let me put this out there for you, because I was a theist for many years. I was a Christian, and I was a creationist. I was a young Earth creationist, because that was what I was taught growing up.
Too, yeah.
So I'll tell you this. One of my favorite things to do in the world is hiking. I love climbing mountains. I love it. And I feel wonderful when I'm on top of a mountain. And I feel very, very connected to the world when I'm standing on top of a mountain. I feel very, very small. It's the same sort of feeling that one gets when potentially that's what I get when I'm looking through a telescope and I'm seeing photographs, of like deep space. I get this sense of perspective. It's a very cool feeling. And there was a time in my life when I would have said that was like the Holy Spirit acting in me, or impressing something upon me. Now I'm fully comfortable with being on top of a mountain and saying, any sense of joy, any euphoric feeling, any moment that feels like, psychological clarity. I don't have any reason to think that that's happening anywhere other than at the level of my brain. And I'm okay with that. I feel fine with that. Just to let you into where I'm operating from, there's nothing in me that's like, I feel like I'm connecting with a higher power. I feel like I'm just, if anything, connecting with sort of my sense of scale of the world and potentially of the universe. Does that make sense?
Sure. It sure does, and like I said, I have so much solidarity with you. I just wanted to call. I want to make an argument here for the call.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to think how to put this out. So like for me, one of the main I followed the Germanic Norse path. One of the main deities that I feel I connected with is Freya. I really feel I connected with Freya, okay? Now, I know she's not real. That cannot be true. There's no way that goddess is real. It cannot be true. But when I do pray to her and I work reciprocity with her by bringing offerings to her, then the attributes that she personifies as love and strength, I start feeling those grow in me. Now, of course, I know being an atheist, that can be a point of contention for you, because you can say, well, I don't need that to feel love and strength, but for me, it helps. Am I making a weak case here? I got something else I can talk about.
Can I ask a question really quick?
Yeah.
So
SDB,
you just said that there's no way that Freya could be real. What perspective are you coming from? Do you believe that these gods are real, or are you using them as a metaphor? I want to make sure we get the definitions clear before we strawman you.
Sure, of course. They're thanks for the warning of the straw man. This was weak. Because I would say the majority of pagans that I've met know they're not real, and just identify them as, like I said at the beginning, these forces of nature that we all feel. And a pagan belief would be by building a relationship with the deity, that those attributes that deity has would begin to manifest more in us and help us through.
I'm wondering when you say build a relationship, building a relationship with something that you're saying isn't real in a literal sense. So it does very much sound like, because I'm just trying to understand. I have not interacted with many pagans. So to make it make sense in my brain, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. I'm thinking about it in terms of, okay, if somebody came to me and said that they found like a deep meaning in like the Star Wars, galaxy, and that they were trying to I'm not saying this to make light of anything. I'm trying to take this very seriously. If somebody told me that they were like walking the path of being a Jedi, and that they find that their life is enriched by adopting a set of principles and trying to become one with like the good side of the Force, and they didn't literally believe in the Force, or they didn't literally believe that they were going to acquire some sort of like magical abilities like a Jedi in the movies, but that they found meaning in this stuff, and that it makes their life better to sort of imagine themselves as a Jedi. Is that analogous to what you're talking about, or am I being a dick?
No. That's very analogous what I'm talking about. That's actually a real faith now. What do they call it? Jainism? What's it called? What's it called? I can't think what it's called. But there's people who really do that. You probably know that.
I've heard of such things.
Yeah, that would be a real good. Yeah, but that would be a real good analogy. It's these forces that everyone feels on the earth that the ancient people, turn into deities. That's exactly it. And I think that I can't speak for every pagan, but I'm sure every neo-pagan that I've met would agree with me that of course, we know our myths aren't real. This is not a revealed religion. This is how ancient people try to explain their surroundings. But a lot of neo-pagans are this could be a point of contention for you, but a lot of neo-pagans are finding out that still by golden reciprocity, offering, communion, prayer to these deities, that we start feeling them in our lives. Now, I'm sure you also know that, when we do pray and meditate, CT scans have shown that we do release dopamine. So,
right.
That's obviously what's making us feel these things. I would argue that why is that? Because, like, if you eat chocolate cake, you release dopamine, but that's an activity. If I'm in a quiet state and I'm having a dopamine release, would you say that's not different?
I think on a chemical level, I think that this is all still just happening at the level of the brain. I'd be interested in hearing what SDB has to say, because I know he's studied, physiology at a level that I have not.
Yeah. So if we're going to go down the route of dopamine, what would you say the activity of prayer or the acts of reverence that you're using for these pagan deities, do you think that's any different from the dopamine release when you're eating the chocolate cake?
Not at all. But the argument that I was trying to make is that, like, when I eat a piece of chocolate cake, that is an activity. I'm actually moving and doing something. When I'm in a meditative state of prayer, I'm pretty calm, but yet I'm having a dopamine release, having me feel these feelings I feel.
So you don't need to be doing something to get a dopamine release, because you're triggering the release from your brain having activity, and your brain can do a multitude of different activities that can release dopamine. So the fact that you are in a meditative kind of state and not seeming like you're doing anything, your brain is still working, right?
Yeah, it's still active. It's still an activity in that sense.
Sure, of course it is.
So the thing that where I'm getting hung up, there's two places I think where I'm getting hung up, which is when you talk about. It sounded to me like you said that when you're praying or when you're engaged in sort of ritual activity, that you feel the presence or the impact in some way of these deities, and that is a big question mark that pops up over my head, where I'm going, well, how do we differentiate between the effects of a deity and just the effects of chemicals in your brain? When you talk about having a relationship with these deities, I wonder what that means. If we're still operating in the land of metaphor, because if this is all just metaphorical, then my response is to kind of be like, okay, I'm happy that it makes you happy, but then I would want to go a step further and go, I understand that there are lots of ways for people to have sort of rewarding religious lives and experiences. But I always question the long-term usefulness of these things, because as far as I can tell, when you talk about, like the attributes of a goddess, and you mentioned love, I experience love all the time. I think that people can experience love without necessarily needing to appeal to an ancient tradition or to a deity. I wonder if these practices in some sense don't hold us back.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think about that also, and I knew that would be a point of contention for atheists, because then you're saying, well, I can experience those. Well, you know, why? Of course I can. But, you know, as far as my private practice, you know, if I'm going through a difficult time, you know, I can set up my altar to Freya, go through the ritualistic. It makes me feel good. Start my bloat, my ritual, and commune in meditation and prayer with the deity, and begin to feel a sense of peace through that activity.
I have a question.
With dopamine release. Sure.
Are you familiar with the placebo effect?
Oh, of course.
So is this any different than a placebo?
No, it's not. You know, that might have been a bad call. I apologize if I've been a bad call. You know,
You're not a bad call at all.
Pagans. You know, there are people
You're
who
not a bad call at all.
Pagans. I might fall under more of that category of an atheo-pagan, because I know these gods aren't real, but I know when I go through my practice, I do feel their attributes. And like I said, I'll mop it up to dopamine, you know, other things, but it helped. You know, it does help me. I did call in. I'm trying to change the subject. I did call in once before, and I talked to Matt, and he said something that made me think, you know, where all religion can be harmful. And I would agree with that, because, of course, in my practice, there are runes. Now, like when I study runes, you know, I don't think, oh, I drew this rune, this is going to happen. I look at all these runes as an archetype, and I think, well, you know, any one of these runes, I could feel any one of these emotions during the day. But, you know, maybe this rune I drew is to make me focus on something that might happen to me so I can be ready for it. You know, maybe there's something unexpected that's going to happen to me so I can be ready for it. Did that make any sense, or did I just completely strawman that?
I mean, it does. No, it makes sense. I just you know, it's been said that there's only so many ways to argue for you know, religious beliefs, and there's really three major ones. People can argue that a religion is true. People can argue that a religion is useful. And people can argue that atheism is you know, such a mess that, you know, it should be avoided at all costs. So it sounds to me like you're
bad at all.
Well, I would agree with you. And so what I'm hearing is you're making a sort of an argument for the utility of certain religious practices, but while still recognizing that there's nothing potential, you know, it doesn't sound like you're arguing that anything supernatural is going on, but just that you personally benefit from observing a set of rituals. Is this accurate?
I'm sure, yes, myself, and I'm sure many other neo-pagans that I've met would, you know, feel the same, would argue the same.
So my question for you is this: Do you think that this is sort of more beneficial to you than just, I don't know, like operating purely within the realm of reality and not making any appeals to these ancient rituals? The thing that I would ask is, like, is it good for humanity, or is it necessary for people to engage in these types of practices? And if not, why do we do it?
No. It's not necessary. I think some people, you know, it's interesting. I think the majority of us atheists, and even the neo-pagans that I know, we've all came out of the Abrahamic faith. The majority of us have. And it's interesting how some people are just like, I don't believe in God at all. I don't believe in anything divine. You know, and then some of us, like myself, there's got to be something out there. But I know it's just not that jealous God in the Old Testament likes to kill babies. You know what I mean? And then we search for, and does that make sense?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's got to be something out there as a thing that people say. Look, I really enjoy talking with you, and I would love for you to call back in the future. Our queue is getting pretty stacked up, so I feel like we should move on just out of respect for all these other callers. SDB, do you want to have last word on this call?
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage you to think a little bit about like how come we need to assign a deity to something that we know if you have other methods of releasing dopamine, how come we need to make this leap to a deity? And I think Kenneth had mentioned this at the beginning, but I encourage you to think a little bit about that, and then I'd love to discuss this further with you in the future.
Totally.
Sure, great. Hey,
and with that,
thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Anytime, Mike.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really do. I love your show. You all take care.
Have a great rest of your day. We appreciate you.